Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. Again, this is your host, Matthew Loughran, Principal Consultant from Midtown West Media. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Deborah Castillero. She is the CEO and founder of BCE, which stands for Bilingual Children's Enterprises, an app development company that helps children learn a second language. Now, their most recent app to launch is Care Bears and Amigos in NYC. We're very excited to have her on the show today. Deborah, how you doing?
Muy bien, gracias, Matthew. We're going to do the interview in Spanish, right?
Maybe some pieces.
Está bien.
Well, great to have you on the show today. I know you've been very busy with the recent app launch, so I know just getting a hold of you to get you on the show has been quite difficult, which is great for you. Congrats on all the success with the most recent launch. But
Thank you so much.
Just want to give you an idea as well. Our listeners are small, medium-sized business owners, entrepreneurs. They could be, have been owning businesses for a while. They come to the show for insights and innovation, or they could just be in a startup phase. So some of the questions I'm going to ask you will kind of be helping them at wherever they are in their journey. So one of the questions I always like to jump in with is, first off, can you share a little bit about your background and kind of what inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Certainly. Well, my family is from Panama, and so I grew up bilingual and bicultural, and I think that those early trips as a child to Panama really kind of set the stage for what I would end up doing in my career. And when I first, after I graduated from college and started working in New York City, there weren't a lot of us that had expertise in what is multicultural. And because I am Latina and because I really care about my community and because I had this unique set of skills, it's a space that I've worked in my entire career. So it's a very comfortable place for me. I certainly have progressed from a Hispanic marketing strategist to a multicultural strategist. And, what made me decide to become an entrepreneur? I think I've just always been entrepreneurial. I remember when I was 10 years old, the tall ships were coming to my local city, and I had this grandiose idea that I would make tall ships T-shirts out of stencils, and I set myself up with a little stand and was selling my T-shirts for $5 and made some money. And as I've progressed through my career, I've had this, I think, unique ability to see trends before they happen. So I do consider myself an innovator, and I was with Sony Music for about 10 years. And so there was like a Latina in the mix there who had this idea of taking some of Sony Music's Latino artists and crossing them over to the general market. And so my big innovative idea at Sony Music was to take Ricky Martin, and I wrote and produced his first Spanglish track to introduce to the American market. And while it sounds, very glamorous, the truth of the matter is it was a $900 million strategy for Sony Music, because after that, we went on to sign Marc Anthony, Jennifer Lopez, and Shakira. So I don't know, I just think I have this unique ability to see trends before they happen. And that makes me entrepreneurial and what we call innovators today.
Well, I think you had a very interesting point there. First off, your background, very unique. Again, you're living in Panama and then also in the United States. But I think the commonality of that is you start at a young age with a small business, in your case, T-shirts, right? Other people, lemonade, Mark Cuban was garbage bags. So, there's always that initial, I think, drive, from a young age, when all of a sudden you start to figure things out as an entrepreneur, which again a lot of our listeners share in that background as well. But very interesting though about the the bilingual piece in the entertainment and music industry. So I'm kind of really curious, coming from that bilingual piece and obviously multicultural in the music industry, how did that translate into education? Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So from music, I went into film and I worked with a lot of the movie studios and a lot of A-list celebrities. And then I got introduced to a really amazing person. His name is Mario Baeza, and he's the former executive chairman of VM Media, which is public television in Espanol and also a startup. And one of the tasks, so I came on as his director of special projects. And one of the tasks that he assigned to me was to work on a white paper about the Latino educational crisis and how high quality children's programming could better prepare kids for success in school. So he and I traveled all around the country, meeting with thought leaders in education, politicians, foundations, etc. And that really was the beginning of me understanding what was happening in the marketplace. So what did I learn from that white paper? I learned that English language learners are growing 7 times faster than the general student population. And I also learned that 25% of all kids in the United States by 2025 will be an English language learner. And I thought to myself, there's a huge opportunity here and also a problem with this dynamic because less than 40% of English language learners actually graduate from high school. And I also learned that only 50% of Hispanic kids actually attend preschool, and that contributes to what we call the word gap, this 30 million word gap. And it really, becoming aware of this problem really spoke to me as a mother and as an innovator and as a Latina who's been actively involved in my community. And I thought, in looking at the profile of most developers, I'm going to make some generalizations here. Most developers are male. Most developers are not people of color. And so I thought, here's this huge need. Who is going to help solve this problem? And I just really felt a sense really of obligation and responsibility to try and at least come up with some type of solution to this problem. And so that's really, between the white paper and me being involved in my community professionally and on a community level, and these new insights that I gained really catapulted me to make a decision to do something about it.
Just the sheer magnitude of the problem that BCE is looking to solve is quite eye-opening. Those numbers that you just shared were quite large and larger than I expected, both from the English language learners numbers as well as the number of Hispanic children that either aren't attending preschool, and then all of a sudden there's the foundation for that 30 million word gap that you just kind of described there as well. So obviously there's something like this quite the mission in place, for BCE to tackle. And I would love to kind of hear a little about maybe the mission of your organization, because it sounds like it's very, culture focused as well as, looking to drive change. And then I would also want to know, how do you plan on implementing that mission,
Yes.
as you grow and so forth?
Right. So what we know, first of all, my company is a mobile and on-demand language platform, which help kids learn a second language, not just through apps, but also through web-based resources and videos. And so the way that we're going about tackling this problem is really focusing on early learners. So surprisingly, most of the language learning companies like Berlitz, Redstone, even Duolingo, they're mainly focused on adults, and in Duolingo's case, they're focused on middle school and up. So we are really dedicated to the early learning space between 2 and 6. Why? Because children have really the greatest propensity to acquire a second language, much more so than adults. And then we've done a lot of research about what is dual language, which is very different from bilingual education. It's been scientifically proven to accelerate second language learning when you incorporate the use of a child's native language to help them accelerate their learning in a second language. So versus combining the languages, you keep the languages separate. And then looking at mobile, because Hispanics are super mobile consumers. And then, if you've read Michael Levine, who's the executive director of the Joan Gantz Center, who does all the research for Sesame Street, he wrote a book called Tap, Click, Read. And he specifically gives a shout out to developers like, hey, in Los Angeles, 25% of the kids are Hispanic and also bilingual and or Spanish dominant. And you go into any school district in the top 20 markets, you're going to find the same dynamic. And he's like, create apps that are multicultural and linguistically diverse. So we launched Tippy Tom, which is this character-driven IP that's multicultural in scope for today's multicultural audiences. So, our solution is focused on these 4 pillars. And so what we've done is we've taken a lot of the research, we've taken the best practices that exist, we've taken, worked hard with our PhDs who are experts in the early learning space and this multicultural IP to launch what is today our second dual language app that has all the key curriculum, preschool curriculum, let's call it Common Core standards, but making it fun and entertaining.
Interesting. Okay. You said quite a few very interesting topics, right? In that one answer. So I just want to kind of go back and for a couple of them. First off, you said that there's some scientific research around the difference between dual language and bilingual, et cetera, and that there's, I think it sounds like more of like a much greater adoption rate and learning rate when you have content in both languages and not combining them together. Can you maybe give like an example of how that would work, or if that is in your app, how does that actually work inside of your app then as well?
Absolutely. So when you go into Care Bears and Amigos, one of the first questions it asks you is what language do you want to play in? And so right now it's available in English and Spanish. And what we've done is we've created 5 worlds, and there's 15 games and also an ebook, and there's animated video content, and there's rhyming songs, etc. What you see in the English part of the game is mirrored in the Spanish part of the game. It's the exact same content, but one version is in English and then second version is in Spanish. And what you can do is you can actually toggle between both languages. So say you're in the world of the zoo, and there are 3 games inside of the zoo. At any point, you can press either Tippy or Tom's face, and it will flip so that you can now practice and play in English. So and then the other thing is, if people are really interested, there's two PhDs that wrote this amazing report, Thomas and Collier. The title is The Astounding Effectiveness of Dual Language Education on Academic Performance. It was an 18-year study that they did on how dual language actually accelerates second language acquisition and also improves academic performance. Really interesting. That's kind of like our go-to Bible in terms of implementing a dual language pedagogy.
Gotcha. It sounds like.
And I would just add, this app is extremely unique and doesn't exist in the marketplace. So most apps are either they're just mainly in, one language or another, but they're not combined.
Yeah, I was going to
They're
say that
speech
it sounded very unique in the ability to toggle back and forth. Because, for example, I have a 2.5-year-old. So, obviously, we want him to be exposed to as much different cultural activity as possible. Me and my wife recently moved back to California, and obviously, large Hispanic influence here as well. And we want him to learn Spanish. So one of my questions that was going to be to ask you at 2.5, is that even, he's in preschool already. So is that kind of also kind of that appropriate age? I think you might have mentioned 2 to 6. Is that kind of what the target is for this type of app and interaction?
Right. Well, some parents are not comfortable having their kids spend time on tablets at the young age of 2. I think really this app was created for kids 3 to 5. However, I do know families where their kids are maybe a bit more advanced, and so they're allowing their kids to explore at 2 years old on tablets. But then I've also heard from teachers, mainly on the West Coast, that because only 50% of Hispanic kids attend preschool, that this is actually an ideal resource for kindergarten and first grade, because many of their kids are coming into first grade without knowing their letters, colors, numbers, and shapes. So,
gotcha. So it really sounds like
the range.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be, whatever's, for your family specifically, but also seems to fill a very specific need within the education market. Again, targeting that Hispanic community to make sure that when kids are coming into school, they will have that that added benefit. Great,
right? And I would add, Matthew, that while we created this platform to address a very serious problem, our app is perfectly suited for English dominant kids, right? To better prepare them for success in kindergarten. Why? There's 750 words in English, so we are talking about building vocabulary. There are early STEM topics where we talk about living organisms and early geometry, early numeracy, what is more, what is less, how to tell time. So basically, to take you kind of through the activities, there's the zoo, which is all about animals and their differences, and learning how to match animals and learning the sounds of animals and matching them up to the name and the visual of the animal. And then there's the Statue of Liberty, where they learn about 1, 2, and 3-dimensional shapes. And then there's the subway, and where they learn about counting, so early numeracy, how to tell time, what is more and what is less. And they visit Washington Heights. For those of you who are not in the New York City area, it's a Latino-centric neighborhood, and that's where we cover phonics and letter recognition. And then there's the third game is karaoke, so the kids get to do a sing-along. And then there's Care-a-Lot, and certainly the Care Bears are experts in what is social and emotional learning. And then finally, there's an ebook that talks about why Tippy and Tom are helping the Care Bears and who they're trying to find and how they wind up in New York City. So there's some beautiful storytelling that also celebrates the immigrant experience. So perfectly suited for monolinguistic kids, whether they're Spanish speakers or English speakers.
No, thank you. It's actually quite the, I think, visual tour that I was getting, as you were kind of going through it. But you brought up a couple of things in there, which I want to kind of jump on as well, even on a broader topic, is when you're launching an app or you're launching a business, right? Making strategic partners can help you either condense timelines, gain access to a target customer base. I know you've mentioned Care Bears a couple times here. I know they're part of your app. Can you kind of let my listeners, everybody in on kind of, how you might have went out and pursued strategic partnerships?
Yes. Well, being that I'm on a shoestring budget,
Mm-hmm.
I volunteer for a lot of conferences. And so, oh gosh, there was a children's media conference in San Francisco that I volunteered for. And I happened to meet one of the VPs from American Greetings Entertainment. And she expressed interest in learning more about what we were building and our mission. And so we ended up connecting, and we got a chance to meet in person along with the president of American Greetings Entertainment. I had a very interesting conversation with them. And what they said to me was, look, we think that there is huge potential in what is English language learning, not just in the United States, but outside of the United States. And clearly you have expertise in this area. And so we're interested in doing a content licensing deal with you, which was amazing, as you can imagine, a little startup to be working with a huge company like American Greetings. So there's the card division, and then there's the entertainment division. So I'm extremely grateful to have them as a partner, and Tenderheart is prominently featured. He's actually the helper buddy in the app that explains to the kids what to expect and what to do next. And so that's an amazing relationship, and they are extremely supportive. And then our other partnerships that have come into play is Facebook. So Facebook has 100 global partners for their Free Basics platform. We are one of their partners for that. And that really came out of me applying for their Facebook Bootstrap program. So I got accepted in that. It's an incubator where they offer support, and they have a couple different tracks. They have the Bootstrap track. They have the social good track. So I got to meet people within the Facebook family. And hence, because of those relationships, this opportunity came about for me to apply for their incubator for Free Basics. And for those of you who don't know what Free Basics is, it's a platform for individuals outside the United States who are on a low data plan. Free Basics allows customers to access their Facebook profile, their Facebook page, along with their 100 partners, and their 100 partners are all really social impact oriented. So amazing opportunity for us. And then we just signed a deal with Fingerprint Play, who they curate all the content for the Samsung Kids app and also Verizon Kids Play. So we will be launching during the month of September on that platform. Curio is the folks from American Greetings have actually introduced me to Fingerprint Play. They introduced me to Curio, so I've got to give them all the credit for helping me solidify these contractual agreements with these amazing partners. So Curio is a tablet company. They have about 250,000 units in the marketplace between the United States and Europe. And so they will preload our app onto their devices and also push out notifications about our launch. And I'm also proud to share that one of our promotional partners is the Los Angeles Public Libraries. We will be doing a promotional campaign with posters and flyers and on their website, especially considering how large their Spanish dominant audience is. So they're a wonderful partner for us as well.
Wow,
so
that was
being scrappy and having great connections, and others that can lead to other introductions, it's been pretty amazing.
No, I agree. So just kind of hearing you go through some of that information and timeline, and all of our Bootstrap listeners, this is a writer downer, so write this down. If you see a conference you want to go to but you can't afford, see if you can volunteer. I think was, the number one thing I can pull out of that. Like, wow, like that's a great way to get in, and see if that's even an opportunity to get in there and meet some folks and network a little bit like you did, which, as you can see now, has led to so many other things for you and your organization.
Yeah, I have another recommendation for us scrappy entrepreneurs. There are conferences that, I haven't been able to volunteer for, but what I've done is I've sat in the hotel lobby and I've tweeted as if I were there at the conference. and have met some very influential panelists as a result of doing that. And, doing the work ahead of time, know who's going to be there, and start pitching, asking them if there's a possibility to meet, and, pretend that you're at the conference, right? And so that's actually worked really well for me as well. So tweeting during conferences, setting up those meetings, sitting in the lobby, but volunteering has been really probably the best way to gain access to these influencers.
I love it. That's a great recommendation. So continue on kind of recommendations. Obviously, it's often said that in a startup environment, it's less about, what to do than, what not to do. So with so many competing priorities and opportunities, Deborah, how do you best prioritize and focus on what's most important?
Yes. So, the startup ecosystem has really changed quite a bit over the last few years. It used to be that, you could have a great business idea on paper and raise money, have the right team in place and be able to raise money. And now you have to have an MVP, you've got to have users, you've got to have these strategic partnerships, you've got to have the right people on your advisory team. I mean, there's just so many things on the checklist to get to funding. And so I tried to raise money before the launch of my second product. And so I wasted time doing that. And because I kept hearing the same thing from investors was, you're pre-revenue, you're too early, we don't make seed investment, et cetera. So I really had to just put my nose to the grindstone and build. And so for 9 months I did that, and I had to do wine tasting events on the weekends, and I was a part-time substitute teacher just to make ends meet, but still be able to build. And so, I'm talking 14-hour days. So prioritizing, okay, I'm not going to fundraise. I will keep my investor connections aware of my progress, but I'm really going to focus on building. So now that I'm done with that, now I'm really focused on user acquisition. And, I'm able to do that because I do have a team in place. And so having you can't do this alone, and finding the right people and nurturing those relationships and bringing the right people on to help you accomplish your goals and your objectives. I think you have to take things in pieces. So while we may be desperate to fundraise, we may not be ready to fundraise. So it's important not to waste your time doing that, but to really build the product and build a really great product. And then, go through establish your own funnel of things that you really need to get done based upon where you are in the stage of your startup. So that's how I prioritize.
Some great insights in that you just went through. So number one, I'd say you kind of close out with was understanding what you can and cannot control within the stage of your business and where you currently are within that stage of business, right? If that current one is, a strategic partnership stage to initially get the product up and launch, get access to some target customer base, great. If I look at what you're currently doing right now with the partnership with the Los Angeles Library, that's ideal, right? So continue on and get New York and, Dallas and Chicago and every other, major city. So go down that path and continue to build out that funnel for yourself, obviously. But I think you had a very important point there was you spent a lot of time looking into the investor world, and then you just needed to kind of, get your head down, drive, and turn the product out. And, it sounds like it's an excellent product. And some of the reviews I've been reading have been excellent about it as well. So kudos on that, and just now kind of, drive forward at this point. So great insights and kind of how to prioritize, and I think stuff on what you can and cannot control. Now, thinking back, and obviously this has been, quite the journey for you so far. Maybe thinking back on your business or the processes that you've done, is there anything that you might have done differently?
Oh, yes. Most definitely. I would not quit my job as early as I did. That's something I highly recommend. You know, it's like the investor community wants you focused 100%. Sometimes this is going to take a lot longer than you realize. I think that for most startups, it requires a tremendous amount of work. It requires being at the right place at the right time. And so anticipating though that you're going to be in this for the long haul, I think is having a very realistic perspective. So if you need to do your startup in the evenings and on the weekends, do that for yourself, because it's going to be very hard and it's a long road. So ensure that you have yourself set up in a way that you have some stability so that you don't put yourself in really difficult financial situation. The second thing is that I've learned is, you know, for 2 years, I thought I was going to be a successful TV producer, because for 2 years, my focus was not on digital, but on creating an animated dual language TV series or VOD series. And if I had done it differently, I would have led with digital. And the other thing I learned last year was I wasted a lot of time talking to ed tech investors, and ed tech investors have a very specific idea of what ed tech is. It's like you are 100% focused on schools. And with us, we don't fit this perfect model that Silicon Valley or that the investor community has established for us, which is, you know, you're either, you know, you're consumer facing or you're ed tech. We are an edutainment platform that uses technology, but so we don't fit into this certain category, which is unsettling to a lot of investors. So, you know, making sure that you're talking to the right people, not wasting your time talking. And sometimes it's trial and error. So in finding good mentors, I think can provide a lot of great insights to help you not waste time. So, yeah, looking back, I definitely would have done many things differently, but this is part of the entrepreneurial journey. I mean, there's a lot of learning that takes place. And again, I can't stress enough that it is a long haul. It's not for the lighthearted. There will be a lot of lows more than there are highs. There's a lot of rejection. You've got to be extremely tenacious and really motivated by your mission in order to endure the difficulty of being an entrepreneur in 2017.
I think that was very well put, in that, you know, the passion needs to be there. The why you're doing it has to be there, has to be tangible, because there are going to be a lot of ups and downs. And as that roller coaster dips down, you need something to focus on to pull yourself back up. So absolutely. And it's interesting that you said too, that you don't fit a specific model, right? Or that investors are looking for. When you think back about disruptive technology, disruptive innovation, it's never fit in that specific model, right? It's always been on the peripheral, and then it started to gain steam, and then all of a sudden it started intersecting with the mainstream market. As it moves up market, it disrupts. So to me, like, you have yourself poised and in a very good place if you're not in a specific model. You know, from, if you think back on, you know, the history of disruptive innovation, how it works. So absolutely. So in that as well, I'd love to kind of just figure out, you know, what your ideal vision or future is for BCE, and kind of, you know, what's next on the table for you guys.
Yes, thank you. Well, the beauty of this model with the Care Bears and Amigos in New York City is our plan for 2018 is to take the exact same app and replicate it into English and Mandarin and English and Portuguese. And as we grow and as we generate revenue, we can do other cities. And I love this model because everyone in the world has heard about New York City, or most people have heard about New York City, but most people outside of the United States may never get a chance to come to New York. So we will give kids an opportunity to have an experience in New York. And then I hope to go to other cities. So I see multiple languages. I see in my future other really fun, educational, entertaining apps. And then it is part of our plan to take Tippy and Tom and create an animated video series and get into book publishing and what is character licensing. So apparel, toys, books, more apps, et cetera, to really develop a global brand. And most people don't know that Dora the Explorer historically for 11 years has done $1 billion in sales every year. So we believe that there is an opening in the marketplace for another character-driven property like Tippy Tom that represents a multicultural audience. And so I'm super excited about building this company. And I do have an exit strategy because my plan is once we either go public or get acquired, I want to build. I want to buy a big, beautiful house with lots of bedrooms, and I am going to have a hacker house specifically for women of color. That I will mentor along with a bunch of other people that we will. So I'm going to be really transparent here and make myself a little bit vulnerable. I will tell you that if it wasn't for the love of two very good friends of mine, I probably, through this process, would have become homeless. I have had people come beside me to support me and put a roof over my head. And I think that is probably one of the biggest obstacles for budding entrepreneurs is figuring out how they're going to live and eat while they build their business. And so I want to give women of color I want to put a roof over their head. I want to give them great, delicious, organic food, and I want to give them all the support that they need to build their companies and change kind of the face of, or I should say, the historical trajectory of lack of investment from the investor community for women of color, because at present time, only 7% of all startup funding goes to women. Only less than 1% of all startup funding goes to people of color. And I would like to be part of that solution. I've just participated in the CUED boot camp, which is an inclusive innovation initiative by the Rutgers Center for Entrepreneurship. And I was in a room with 15 other companies. Most of them were African American. And then there was one Latina in the mix, and it was absolutely wonderful. And so I want to continue to build on that. And that's my goal. Sell the company or get acquired, and then phase into being the grande madame of a hacker house for women of color.
I love it. I love the roadmap. I love the transparency. Again, to me, it's still a continuation of that vision. And then, being a native New Yorker myself and have traveled the world, people perk up when you say you're from New York City and they've always wanted to go there. So if you're building this program to actually give kids that experience to go there, virtually, in an interactive way, I think it actually will have, quite a bit of impact as well. So awesome. Love it. Now, I always end these interviews with a similar question, which is, especially when I talk to tech entrepreneurs, this kind of tends to go on for a little bit, but what gadget do you feel that you're totally addicted to and can't live without?
Gadgets. I have pretty standard stuff. I mean, In my office, if you walk in on any given day, you're going to see an older iPad, a newer iPad, an Android tablet, an Android phone, portable chargers on my desk. Because when you're building an app, you need to be able to test on all these different devices to see the differences, what's working, what's not. So those items plus, my headphones and my MacBook Pro, those are like, this is why my backpack weighs so much, because I'm like constantly walking around with like 2 or 3 tablets, a laptop, and a mobile device at any given time. It's like I don't travel without them. So those are my go-to gadgets, to say the least.
Love it. And then just for our listeners, what's the best way for them to learn more about BCE or the Care Bears and Migos and NYC? How can they get access to you as well?
So tippytom.com, TIPITOM, and then just do a quick search on either Google Play or the App Store for Care Bears and Amigos. You'll find our app there, and you can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm, like I said, if you haven't ascertained already, I'm very supportive of other fellow entrepreneurs, particularly women and entrepreneurs of color. So consider me a resource for any of your questions or concerns.
Well, perfect. Deborah, I want to thank you for taking the time today out of your busy schedule. And I know right after a launch, you have a lot of stuff going on. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm grateful.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.
Over 100 years ago, Boar's Head opened its doors with a different set of rules. No cutting corners, no compromises. Exceptional Boar's Head products began to appear. Our deluxe ham, oven gold turkey, and ever roast chicken, made to standards rarely found in the deli business today. Of course, Boar's Head isn't sold everywhere. Only in stores that share our high standards and slice our products fresh at the deli. Boar's Head. Compromise elsewhere.
What you doing? Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. Bye, singing dog. Bye, goal.
I pronounce you.
Bye, wedding ceremony.
Stop! At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.